Welcome to the Massimo Show, everybody. I'm your special guest host, Mike Gallegos. Today, we're going to be featuring Rod Santomassimo and talking about the 6 key trends that are facing the commercial real estate industry today that our brokers need to get in front of.
Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show.
Rod, welcome to the show.
Hey, I like this show. I should do one just like it. Hey, Mike, I got to tell you, I'm thrilled that you are our special host. And, you and I have been working together for such a long time. I wanted to introduce you to our audience. Mike has been a coach of ours and a strategy leader of ours for around 5+ years. And recently he's come on as the chief operating officer and he runs our consulting division as well. But Mike and I were looking at the post-pandemic life of a commercial real estate agent and saying things have changed. So today we're talking about the 6 post-pandemic trends and how they impact you. So Mike, you ready to get started?
Let's do it. Looking forward to it.
Okay. So Mike, here's what I'm thinking. Number one is what I found was during the pandemic, people finally started to use different forms of prospecting because they couldn't, they couldn't send letters to offices. They were gone. They generally couldn't call because they didn't have their cell phone numbers. A lot of people we found out. And so they started using LinkedIn and Twitter and DMing and some video and emails. And it all was just a hogwash of, hey, let's try anything. But what has happened since the pandemic and what we're seeing and what we're coaching now with our clients is this concept called prospect sequencing. And what prospect sequencing is the order in which you would go out and attract and ask for business from a prospect. Now, Mike, when I say cadence, what do you think when I say cadence?
Well, from the prospecting world, I would normally think of cadence in terms of the frequency with which you conduct your business development efforts through whatever attempts or ways you're trying to get those things done. And so maybe the way that our brokers hear it the most is how often do you call somebody and how often do you follow up? I mean, those I think would be the first couple of things that come to mind.
And you're absolutely correct. So for a long time, the theory was cadence. You're going to call X number of times, X number of messages, and on the X call, you will do the following. So while it was all based on frequency, cadence, you're right, Mike, exactly what I was thinking, there was actually a subliminal sequencing in your cadence because there was a number of calls, and then maybe there was an email, and then maybe there was a follow-up letter, or maybe there was a different kind of email. So most of you in the audience have already started sequencing. What you haven't done is look at the art of sequencing and understanding the structure of which forms you should use and which frequency, cadence, and for which type of prospect. So, for example, Mike, if you were to meet someone for the first time and they knew you and you knew them now at a cocktail party or a networking session, we're all now getting back out there, prospecting sequence would be probably over a 7-day period where you would do some phone calls, some emails, some videos, some text messaging, some LinkedIn, some Facebook, and you get the right combination. Now, if there was a trade show and you met someone and it was a list of people you got, for example, and it's purely cold, that sequencing would have to be structured out to be much longer because it takes a while to get that person to really understand the value you bring and you're a stranger. Mike, does that make sense?
Maybe I just don't know that a lot of our brokers have heard this often enough to think through it and execute it. Most of the brokers that I've interacted with, coached, talked to, etc., they really think it's a matter of making some more phone calls, having more phone numbers in my database so I can dial them, not just at once every 6 months, but once a quarter, and then once every 60 days. So how do you think they break out of that mold and start dipping their toe into this process of all these different areas where they can apply this work?
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a test. You're going to have to understand the process for that specific prospect you're going after, and then implement that structure and A/B split test like marketing firms do, Did the call, LinkedIn message, video, text, tweet, did that seem to work best? Or was it LinkedIn message followed by a letter, followed by a call? There's all the things you can play with, Mike. And that's what we're doing now at the Massimo Group. In the past, when we started the Massimo Group, we coached cadence calling. Absolutely. But now we're coaching prospect sequencing. So really understand that. So Mike, the way you get involved is you test it. You dip your toe in the water, you pick a prospect and a pool of prospects actually, and you start to sequence. In fact, we're doing that right now with several of our clients. We're beta testing certain sequences for certain messages for certain prospects. So Mike, that's how you get started.
Interesting there. I'm going to be curious to see what we discover through these tests to find out a warmer approach, somebody that is aware of your firm and is aware of your presence, maybe for a broker who's been in the business for a while, versus the best sequencing cadence for brokers who are breaking into the business and are announcing their presence to some prospects. I wonder if there's going to be maybe some differences that are more effective for one of those, or maybe what the best version is for each of those as we move forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Mike. And so that's the second trend we're seeing. And then if you're an individual broker, agent, trying to get out there, and it has to do with really the logical next step of prospect sequencing. If you're doing all the sequencing with all these platforms, what it means is that you're omnipresent, that you're using every platform you can, personal, physical, digital, all social channels, to get in front of that prospect and or influencers to create a presence within that community. So long said, no social media. I know there are influencers in social media, but just using social media on its own, just being a great someone who tweets or someone who uses LinkedIn or someone uses Facebook, that itself was, it's been the last 5 years we've seen that work, the evolution of social media. But now what we're seeing is it's more than that. It's the omnipresence. It's having that complete immersion around your influencers, around your prospects, so you are known. And that takes effort, but with the tools that exist today, really a coordinated effort isn't that expensive, and it certainly isn't that comprehensive as it sounds. So Mike, when I say omnipresence, what do you think of when I say that?
Well, I'm probably a little bit biased towards the sales aspect of this, having been a student of that game for quite some time now. So I would think omnipresent is showing up in the universe of your prospect or client in as many different ways, in as many different places as possible. So that, I think if I drive down the street and I see a billboard and I happen to hear the jingle for that attorney firm at the same time or shortly thereafter, I've seen the billboard and then they're advertising on the bus stop and then I get something in the mail. The more ways that you can reach out and influence and touch and interact and engage with your audience, the better. The more influential you'll be, the more memorable you become, and the more front of mind that you become. I'm guessing omnipresent has something to do with that.
Yep, it's there. And if you had to ask yourself, if you listen to this, what channels am I leveraging consistently and yes, purposefully to make sure I have a presence within my market? So that's the first two. And they're synergistic. Let's face it. Prospect sequencing will almost force you to build some type of omnipresence. Now, the third trend we've definitely seen, and this is what the shutdown has caused, is brokers left the office. They didn't get the support of the admin pool or their marketing team or whatever it might be. We were all virtual. And now that many of us are going back to the office, we're asking ourselves, do I need the admin pool? Do I need the marketing team? Do I need this overhead? And yet, some people don't need to be paying 40, 50% or more of my commissions for those services. Because we all adapted during the pandemic and recognize now we can outsource research, we can outsource marketing, we can outsource almost any administrative task. So this third trend is definitely a move towards independence. We see more and more professionals in commercial real estate actually taking the leap of faith or the trust in themselves and saying, you know what, I can do this on my own. I don't need the big brokerage firm. I'm not saying that's a good choice or bad choice. I'm saying that's what we're seeing. And so this move to independence, Mike, is definitely happening. In fact, I read one stat, especially a coach gave me a stat. I get coaches, Mike. And the coach shared me that small business filings have tripled the historical average, because people are now saying, they learned, I don't need an employer. I don't need maybe a broker. What I need is the internet, the researcher in the Philippines, and it's the Excel guru in Mexico. And I could build my business just based on that. Mike, you sense that as well? You agree? You see something different?
I think there's a play on words there with the move towards independence, in that there's a couple different perspectives. One is brokers can easily feel, once they've mastered their craft, or they've started to master their craft, that they have the skills and the abilities, and they can self-source the resources to go conduct their business. So I see that independence ending with NCE, right? Or NTS. But the other component of that move toward independence ending in NCE is that, and I can speak for myself here as well, I really enjoy the autonomy to be able to understand what the objectives are and then have the room to go conduct it and execute it and get it done, and have, as you said earlier, a high level of trust within the framework of the organization to go perform what we need to do. So that sense of independence as an individual, I think, is also in place here, that no doubt creeps into the mind of somebody who's evaluating, should I stay at brand X, brand Y, or should I create my own brand? And then at the individual agent level, they're feeling the same thing. So up and down that totem pole or strata, I think this trend is in every corner of the room when we talk about a brokerage company.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. And oh boy, am I pumped. My new book, Knowing Isn't Doing, well, when it launched, it hit #1. That's right. Top-selling sales book in the entire country on Amazon.com. We're so excited to share many of our proprietary Massimo methods to allow our readers to start finally building that business and the life they've always desired. To get your own copy or learn more, visit www.knowingisn'tdoing.com. And Mike, the fourth trend is one that I think, it was coming before the pandemic, and then it really was highlighted during the pandemic. And now I think people are making a mistake, and I'll share what that is. We found that during the pandemic, where did the business go? Well, it went to the consultants, the advisors. It did not go to the transactors. Well, first of all, there wasn't that much business. But second of all, it was individuals who set themselves apart and positioned themselves as advisors or consultants, and what sales guru Anthony Anaroni calls the one-up position. Look, I'm here to advise you. Yeah, we don't necessarily have to do business together, but I want to put you in a position to make a more educated decision. That position of a consultant advisor absolutely was the position to be in during the pandemic. And now, after the pandemic, what I see happening is velocity's back up. In fact, it's getting some really high levels historically, but people are going back to transactor mode. Transact. And that's great from a commission standpoint. But when the market shifts, and Mike, you know it's going to shift again, those transactors, they'll be left behind just as they were during the pandemic. So what we're asking you to think about is, how can you position yourself as an advisor or a consultant versus simply a facilitator of deals? That's a commodity. Mike, your thoughts?
I'm going to talk about this in a few when we get to the broker owner, managing director, managing principal level here. But if we bring the plane down to the individual broker level, it's showing up in a different format. When you put your business development messaging together, what verbiage are you using? How do you wordsmith that? So if I think about the usual suspects of first 4 or 5 things that you hear brokers talk about, the questions, the opening statements, the suggest the close patterns of the phone call, all typically lead towards, is there a transactionable event that is going to or could take place the next few months where the broker could offer assistance for lease or for sale, or figuring something out there, putting together an off-market transaction, guiding an exchange, etc. Very few and far between are the broker conversations where they're inviting, let's meet and evaluate how your assets are performing compared to your original investment perspective. When you bought the property or when you leased the space, how did you define success? Was that an internal rate of return? Was that a performance widget or performance cost per widget that you're thinking about from your business perspective as an owner occupant? And then quarter by quarter, year over year, revisiting those numbers to make sure you're offering guidance. I'm going to talk about asset management level guidance a little bit later. But what would an asset manager do if they went out and put together a report? So for a broker to be able to talk about those components and offer that as the entry point for the relationship, that's what comes to mind. I think that's where we can offer value and trouble find so we can troubleshoot down the road, maybe see some things up at the front of the boat that the client might not be able to see from their position. And I think that's how you win and build relationships moving forward.
Completely agree. Okay, that takes us to number 5 of the 6. And number 5 is going to be a little troubling for some folks out there, but without a doubt, there's been a restructuring of the big brokerage, of Big Brother. There just has been. Look, during the pandemic, it was the big brokerage houses that let a lot of people go. It was just the case. The smaller firms didn't have the big overhead, didn't have to let that many folks go. And those that stayed recognized, just like the prior transactor advisor, the independents, right? Wait a minute, I don't need all this stuff. So that impacted big brokerage. And that impact of big brokerage, that means that we are seeing teams from fantastic, they're all fantastic firms, JLL, CBRE, and you can continue to name them. They're moving to, well, more independent firms, more loosely structured firms, whether it's a EXP commercial or KW commercial, or those, residential thought to be firms now moving to a stronger commercial base. Independent, high commissions, low infrastructure, low operating head. This is not going to go away. This absolutely will not go away. In fact, I would foresee, and Mike, look at your thoughts on this, maybe we'll see the big brokerage houses, besides the corporate clients, I get it, they're going to have to move to more of a hybrid model if they want to continue to scale. Mike, what's your thoughts on that?
Evolution is paramount, and I think that's going to touch all levels of brokerage house, the institutional, the privately owned, regional or boutique firm, which might have 4 or 5 people that went out on their own so they could do everything their own way, but they lack no expertise and they have no shortage of transactional experience. And then the firms that you mentioned that might be solidifying a larger, more substantial commercial base. There's a myriad of skill sets in there, but I think what they all will need to focus on and moving forward is what is going to be the glue that bonds the people to the brand. So if it's Rod and Mike start their own venture and we specialize in a product type, or we specialize in an area, and we're 3rd generation company here locally, what's our unique value proposition there? And what do we stand for as managers and leaders that are going to glue the people to the company? And then if you think about at a much larger organization, which might have, 100,000 people globally, okay, what's the fingerprint of that office or the fingerprint of the team within that office? And how do they interact? What do they stand for? So when we see these restructuring efforts and the movement now where people want hybrid remote working freedoms and luxuries to be able to conduct business wherever, or a creative working space. And keep in mind, we don't yet know if there's going to be another surge of a variant of COVID or something that comes after it. But I think we can anticipate the speed at which we're going to have to respond requires that we anticipate some solutions in advance. And then we have to build the relationships and have trust in place with the people we work with. So we and they want to stay. I think that's brand agnostic. It does not depend on size or scope. You have to have the trust built in advance so that you can pull it out, withdraw it based on those deposits when you need it.
Okay. So that brings us to the 6th and final. I think these trends are here to stay. You all need to adapt to these 6 items. And the 6th one is going to hit you at home. It's going to hit your bank account. And that's this. We found during the pandemic and after the pandemic, those firms and those individuals that not only survived, but thrived, they had diverse channels of income. So think of a brokerage firm, property management, tenant rep, investment sales, asset management, consulting, and list goes on and on and on. Think about you. What is your prime source of income? Most of you are going to say, my commissions through transactions, which that will likely be your prime source of income for many years in the future because those are high commissions, or hopefully they are. But think about what else you can produce. What other income do you create? What we found during this post-pandemic and impacted us so much, we actually changed things a little bit at the Massimo Group, is people are diversifying how they make their income. We're seeing individual brokers create webinars for fee, not free, but for fee. we are seeing individual brokers go out and start to invest in commercial assets, which makes total sense. That is the evolution of commercial real estate, start investing in assets. We've seen people start to offer video programs to their clients for fee. So many things they're doing. Now think of consulting. They're thinking of offering BOVs for fee. Fees, commissions. You may be shaking your head saying that's never going to happen. Folks, it is happening because people want to make sure they have multiple sources of income so they can then take command of any shifts that happen. In fact, it's impacted us so much at the Massimo Group that we've created a new initiative. We have several channels of income at Massimo, but our latest initiative, which we're launching in Q4, is called the Massimo Concord Ventures, where I'm partnering with a former coach of ours and former client of ours, a gentleman named Brad Arns, and we're creating a venture fund just for our Massimo coaching clients. So all our coaching clients will have the ability to invest in commercial real estate and, of course, get passive income to supplement their commission income. Just one thing we're doing, the many channels. So my challenge to you is, what are you doing to create more income? If you just depend on the commission, then you may just be a transactor and not a consultant, right? And that is problematic. So Mike, what I'm going to do is just quickly share these 6 trends that we shared today so the audience will understand them. Number 1, prospect sequencing, not cadence, but sequencing. Think about structuring sequences. That's what we're doing here at the Massimo Group with our clients. Omnipresent. It's just not being on Twitter, folks. That doesn't make you omnipresent. You have to immerse your audience with your knowledge, with your skills, with you. Move to independence. Yeah, think about that. How can you become more independent? And what did you learn from the pandemic? Being the advisor or the consultant and not the transactor. The quicker you get to that position, the more money you're going to make. Absolutely true. But the longer and the more stable your practice will become. The restructuring of big brokerage houses, it's happening. It's happening every day, every single day. And more of these low-cost, high-fee infrastructures will continue to grow. And finally, the personal diversification of income is what you need to be thinking about right now. How can you, well, I'm not saying giving up your commissions, but grow revenue through other ways. So, Mike, those are the 6 trends. And I'm excited because, Mike, what are we going to do in our next podcast? Share with our audience.
Well, we're going to look at some of these trends and add in a couple of others that are pertinent for anybody who runs a team or owns, manages, or leads a brokerage office to consider so that from that angle and that lens, they can apply these things from the top down, help create the groundswell from the bottom up so that the team can stay intact and continue to gel and the office doesn't get caught by a rogue wave trend, such as what happened to us with COVID. So that's where we're going next.
Oh, can't wait for that, Mike. And Mike, I know you're the host and I want to thank you for hosting this. So thank you so much for your time. But Mike, I got to close the show because I always close it a certain way. So I'm going to close it. And that's, folks, look, Mike and I just dropped a lot of knowledge on you and that's nice, but that's not really important. What's important is the doing, right? Because knowing isn't doing. So take the stuff we shared today and think about how can I apply this, implement this in your practice and watch your income grow. But more importantly, build the business and the life you've always desired. Mike, thank you so much for being part of the Massimo Show.
Pleasure to be here today.
Okay, buddy. Everyone else, let's move forward. See you soon. I want to thank you for listening to this version of the Massimo Show. And please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Group. And did you know over the last 12 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners in helping them achieve the business and the life that they've always desired. To learn more how we could possibly help you achieve your goals, please visit www.massimo.coach. That's www.massimo.coach.